How's it going? And welcome to episode 244 of On the Wire, proud member of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. I am Adam Howe, joined as always by Kevin Hasting, and we've got a great show lined up for you today. And just peek behind the curtain, this is going to be a nice little marathon for us as we are going to bust out not one but two episodes in this sitting. We will publish them separately. But we're going to talk all things pitching today as we continue our preview episodes. We got to make up ground, Kevin. We missed last weekend, so we got to put out two episodes back to back. Get all the pitching that we can that is not save related. So today we will be tackling the volume plays, the wins, the strikeouts. Throw in some innings pitched in there as well, just because those usually translate to strikeouts as well. But before we get into all that, man, missed you. How you doing?
Doing great, Adam. Thank you. Great to see you. Good to be here as always. It's been very hectic, as I say quite often. This is amazing to be here when everything else has been hectic and talk about this. But part of the hectic has been a lot of drafting going on. And this is fun time of year, Adam. We have a draft going together. We both did our Earth Leagues this past weekend. We have TGFBI starting Monday. I'm in a couple of other draft and hold drafts. One of them, my Champions League qualifier draft and hold. So, yeah, this is it's my favorite time of year. I am a college basketball fan, so that's getting ramped up. And so they'll have those opening rounds when I'm in Las Vegas doing a main event draft here in a few weeks. So, things have been hectic, but part of it is great. Part of it is the fun that all the draft season brings to us.
Yeah, we talk about draft season being March, but really it's kind of February, right? Because February is the last time where you can really feel comfortable jumping in a lot of slow drafts all at the same time and still feel like you're going to make it before the end of the year. Because, your big drafts are happening at the end of March, as close to the beginning of the season as possible, right? All the main event drafts happen there at that time. You want as much information as possible to make your decisions on your draft picks. And so this is by then, you're not in 4, 5, or 6 drafts all at the same time because there's not enough time. Like you can't sit in a bunch of slow drafts. Like you can't do multiple. Like maybe you are doing a bunch of main events or you're doing multiple live drafts, but they're over in anywhere between 3 and 5 hours. And so you move on to the next one.
That's
so
right.
February is a fun time to kind of tackle all of those. Like that's the time period where people are drafting anywhere between 1 and 7 drafts all at once, and that's amazing and fun and confusing at the same time.
I'm almost overwhelmed. I'm close to overwhelmed with the 4 drafts I have going, and I know there are people that have a whole lot more than that going at one time.
Well, I will say this is the nice little segue. I was going to talk about this anyway, but you mentioned we had our Earth drafts. I am in Glarf. You're still in Tarf. Tarf being the Texas area Roto Fantasy, Glarf being Great Lakes, and it was a lot of fun. This was probably my first and my only live fast draft that I'll do this year. I don't count my home dynasty league because it's like 5 rounds and we do it remotely anyway. But I was able to use and have set up the new Pitcher List 2.0 live draft assistant, which was fun because I had people looking over my shoulder and making comments because they hadn't seen it before. And they're like, Adam's over here doing 2 drafts at the same time. What is that? Like, what platform is that? I'm like, no, it's my assistant helping me as I try to move my way through this 2-minute timer as opposed to the 2-hour timer that we have in our listener league. Man, it was a godsend. Like, I was so happy to have it. Like, so many people in the room, God bless them, taking notes, jotting down notes on pieces of paper. Some people have their computers up, looking up stuff. Maybe they had their own spreadsheets, but just having that live draft assistant there to like it automatically pulls in the PLV projections, the 2.0, the most updated projections. It's got the cheat sheets in there from like the rank. Like you can toggle between rankings versus like ADP and projection values. So depending on how you want to actually value the players, where you're going. My favorite part was the live standings get updated automatically. I mean, it's useless in the first like 3 or 4 rounds, but once you start getting deeper into the draft, you start realizing, oh, I'm really low on speed, or I'm really low on power, or I'm really low on strikeouts, and you need to start pivoting in different directions. It's of course based on the projections that you're utilizing in that. But it was yeah. And of course I was, those grades you get after the draft,
Oh
NFBC,
yeah.
and then you're always like, oh man, it gave me an A. I don't like that. I got a B plus from the NFBC. I'm like, fine, okay. But I don't know how I feel about it yet. But I did,
Well,
according to the standings on my draft assistant, I will win by a hefty margin.
and that should be expected, right? If you
Right, of
assume
course.
you were the only one in that draft using that particular draft
Yes.
assistant, it should, if you followed it very closely at all, think you have the best team.
Mhm.
That's how the system works. So any system that way. So when it's something new like this, you're trying out and you're fairly certain you're the only one in the room that had it, that could go, that could go either way. But the system itself, that site, is obviously going to give you an A, of course.
Yeah, I would hope. Yeah. If it didn't, then I probably shouldn't have been using it.
Right.
Yeah, it was cool because I mean, the settings were all set up already, which is nice.
Yep,
It's got nice. It's got default settings for like Yahoo, CBS, NFBC, which NFBC is nice because there's only one setting, right?
Mhm.
The rosters are the same no matter what kind of draft. You just have to determine if it's a 12 team or 15 team or what have you. So it was a lot of fun trying to keep up. I'm using it again during our listener league, just a heads up. So you can probably get a good sense of who I'm picking, especially later on, if you're following along as well. But it's a lot. I mean, I'll admit it's a lot easier to keep track of it in a slow draft because I can wait 3 or 4 or 5 picks and then just catch up. But in a live draft, it's like I've got the windows side by side, and I'm like, okay, they made a pick. But it was a fun exercise, and I highly recommend it to anybody out there. I'm not biased at all. This is not this is a pitcher list podcast, but it's a really great tool and totally worth it. Next year, the plan is to have it update automatically, which I think is going to be awesome. That I don't have to go to click. But that'll be really cool. But that'll come in 2027 draft season.
Yeah, amazing.
Cool. But Kevin, let's see. We're gonna do what we do normally. We're not gonna talk news, right? We'll find a way to get news in here because obviously a lot of stuff has happened. Spring training has already commenced. We've already got a bunch of injuries, both due to pitchers just reporting and coming off the mound after like one appearance. So I'm sure we will find a way to bring that stuff in. But we are talking about wins, strikeouts, volume plays. Like I said, we probably need to scatter in some innings pitched just in general because that is how you do volume your way into strikeouts, at least, if not wins as well, because guys who are putting up a bunch of innings are usually going deeper into games, qualifying for wins more often. So has your opinion of the categories changed on draft day? Because this is a very hot topic during season as you're chasing the wins in strikeouts with 2-star pitchers, with good opportunities, good matchups, et cetera, et cetera. So you can kind of finagle your way into that if you hit a bunch of roadblocks in your draft, you get a bunch of injuries after your draft. But how much emphasis are you putting on these categories during these 8 or 9 drafts you're doing right now?
Oh, a whole lot. We talk about this a lot. Chasing wins. I've always said that we don't want to be chasing wins, but we have to. We've brought it up several times over the past few seasons. Rob Silver did a presentation at First Pitch Arizona a few years ago where he put up all these metrics, right? A winning team. Yes. The pitchers on good teams get more wins. The starting pitchers shocked everybody. I know, right? Bullpen not giving up the lead when they come in the game. Then your starter has left. That's something that to take into consideration, right? Many of these different things we have to chase wins. I have mentioned throughout this offseason that I'm typically not jumping into the first or second round with starting pitching, but I'm trying to get the next tiers of pitchers, more of them a little earlier. In the 15 team on the wire listener league, I had the 7th pick and I got away from that. I decided to give this a shot, and I did take Scooble with the 7th pick in the draft that just got underway for us. So yet to be determined how that works out for me. But and that is, yes, chasing wins, but I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. As I'm doing this, I am keeping an eye on the ratios. We can't just disregard them. These do correlate, this and the next episode. We got to go back and forth between them a little bit. We are going to separate them a bit in general for our discussions here. But yeah, we have to take the ratios into consideration, even when we're chasing wins. And that's why I have been doing it a little earlier in my drafts, not necessarily jumping into the Scooble, Crochet, and Skeens tier, but finally, for the first time in draft season, I did do that, and I want to see how that works out.
Yeah, I mean, just the idea of, waiting too. So I did this in my Glarf draft. Like, I was the last one to put a starting pitcher on my roster. I think I went 8 or 9 rounds in the 15 teamer, which, is not typically heard of. But like, and I found myself obviously struggling to draft reliable, quality strikeouts. And wins, I almost chop that off as a loss. Like at that point, right? It's like, all right, I'm going to get what I get, and I'm going to have to be happy with it. And so chasing wins for me, if you wait that long, becomes just an exercise of, having to really pick the right matchups in season. Because I can't trust anybody past round 10 to get me where I need to be in wins. Like, they'll get me what they get me, but I can't trust that they're going to be double digits, like all of them, or maybe even any of them at that point. And at what risk or at what cost do I take that? Like you said, we'll get to ratios later on. That's not what we're talking about today per se, but just like we talk about your average drain, and when we're talking about getting power later on, can you really rely on? So I did that in my Glarf draft. I was more focused on not draining my average later on in my draft to get power. I got all my power mostly with batting average cushion, if you will.
Yeah.
Schwarber, we'll see how that. I mean, he won't. Maybe he won't hurt me again, but
I have so much Schwarber.
And
I'm penciling him for 230, but it hasn't been long ago that we saw him well below that. But yes, I'm not penciling him in for the 240s projected for. We've seen 2 seasons of that, but yeah, it's not comfortable. Let's put it that way.
I had the 15 spot. I grabbed Vlad and Schwarber back to back, and the only comment I got was like, well, Adam's good on power for a little bit, but that's pretty much all I got there. But hoping that the Vlad, 300 can cushion the Schwarber 230, and I'll cross my fingers that you're right on that one.
For another 247.
Exactly.
Like we got. Yeah.
But anyway, regardless, we're going to get strikeouts elsewhere. So I did something different in our listener league. I'm on the opposite turn for this one. I got the one spot. I always hate it when I get the first pick in one of our listener leagues. I'm like, I swear, I just set my KDS like everybody else. I don't have any control over this. I felt really awkward picking the first. This is the first time I've had the number one pick. I don't think I want it again. Um, uh, and anyway, obviously I went Otani, but then I went back. I took two relievers in on the turn on the 2-3 turn, and mostly, what was in my head was that during my Glarf draft, Sarah Sanchez grabbed, and I can't remember all of the pitchers she picked, but she went very heavy on the relievers that she did pick. They were very strikeout heavy relievers. And so a comment was made at one point where it's like, pretty sure Sarah's going to be the only one that has relievers that finish the year over 100, like multiple relievers that have more than 100 strikeouts. And that kind of popped in my head. So I grabbed Cade Smith and I grabbed Edwin Diaz, both of which will definitely help me as far as relievers go in the strikeout category. How much more value are you placing? I mean, relievers are going to get pushed up. They always they have been for the last couple of years. People are starting to realize, hey, this is a vault. If they haven't realized it before,
And they haven't backed off since Gladiators ended and people are doing less draft and holds, the two styles that we typically see the relievers get pushed up. Now that we're seeing online championships and FAAB leagues be drafted, the relievers aren't dropping like we typically see.
It's because, I mean, one of the reasons is, one, you obviously need that stability in that one category, but there are relievers, especially toward the top of your draft, that are not only going to get you the 30 plus saves consistently throughout the year, but they're also going to help you in strikeouts, like piecing together I hope this guy gets me saves and then he gets blown up and doesn't get any strikeouts, or the other bad things that can happen in that realm. How much emphasis are you putting on that as you are considering like picks, your reliever picks, especially in the first 8 rounds of a draft?
Yeah, if I'm going early on relievers, I definitely take that into account. The other thing that I take into account is, this is more of a team context thing, because it can vary greatly from season to season, but do closers for that team typically get a few wins as well, right? Typically the projections, they give all the solid closers that we believe are opening the season as a closer are going to keep the job for at least a while. They're almost always projected for 3 or 4 wins. A couple of them are going to get 9 or 10. Right. And it's hard to know who that is. It varies greatly, but I think it's more of a team thing for me. Does the team use that closer when it's a tie game in the 9th inning? That can be huge for a win. That type of thing. So yes, absolutely. I take that all into account, not just strikeouts like you're saying, but 100 strikeouts and my closers getting me 7-8 wins. If they both do that, that's more than I'm getting from any of my starting pitchers probably.
Yeah, and I mean that plays a big role in like the value of that roster spot, right? Because I mean, my mentality here is that I'm not thinking about a reliever filling up a roster spot, and you've only got the 9 that you can fit on your starting 9 for your pitchers, especially in an NFBC format where you don't even have the SP, the RP, everybody's just a P. Right. And so now I can feel confident enough knowing that I don't need to fill in that third pitcher slot with another reliever. Maybe I have another one on my bench just in case there's an injury, knock on wood, whatever. But those two, it's kind of like your mentality with catchers. It's like you can get that extra, that extra
100%.
bat, basically, if you get 2 guys that are going to get 500 plate appearances or more. I've got an extra starting spot to get that many more innings pitched which will volume my way into other opportunities.
That was absolutely my thought when I began a couple seasons ago taking earlier closers. I want to only have to have 2 relievers in my lineup. I want the opportunity to throw 7 starters out there every week. If the matchups dictate that I'd rather have a reliever in that spot and protect my ratios and maybe snipe a win or a save, that's my decision. I don't want to be forced to play 3, maybe even 4 relievers in a week trying to catch up on saves.
Yep. Yeah. I've got the opposite problem in Glarf, where I was only able to grab Chapman early on and waited way too long to even think about getting a second closer. And now I think my only other reliever is Matt Brash, which I got at the very end of the draft, which, fine with. I'm like, that'll be somebody I kind of rotate in and out, and maybe something.
You'll use him as your 7th starter once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. The problem is that he'll be the 8th starter because I only have the 1 closer. So I'm gonna have to be doing some FAAB early on.
We'll find somebody.
Yeah.
I know there's this show that they talk about FAAB before each week, and we'll find you a closer.
All right, cool. Yeah, send me the link. But all right. Well, I mean, voluming our way into strikeouts is one thing. Let me pick your brain a little bit more on the wins. Something you mentioned just a little while ago is the idea of the bullpen not ruining games. Like how much thought are you putting into that when you are projecting your own win total? Like, you can look at these projections from all the algorithms and all the other PLB projections, ATZ, everybody, whatever. But how, are you placing any extra emphasis on the teams, not only a winning team, but a team that has the backup? And I'll get into this too. It also goes into the fact, how deep is a pitcher going to go, a starter going to go, where they're not relying on 4 or 5 relievers to save their game. They're only relying on 2, maybe 3 tops.
Yeah, it's I'd say a little more than a tiebreaker. It's not something I want to dwell on too much. There's so many other things we're taking into account with pitching, but definitely, if I have a couple of pitchers that I have similar feelings on, both the offense of that team, are they going to put up runs to help get them a lead, and the bullpen of that team are, I keep wanting to say tiebreaker, but a little more than that. It's not just a tiebreaker. I think if I have a couple of pitchers and one slightly below another one on a much better team with a better bullpen, yeah, they're moving above that other pitcher, even if I like the skills of the other pitcher better. 100% taking that into account. And I don't want to dwell on it too much. I would like to say it's just a tiebreaker, but it's a little more than that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel, as you get further deeper into the draft, it's definitely more about situation for me. It's about the situation weighs more heavily than the first half of the draft, even first 100 picks overall. You draft skill over opportunity at the beginning, but in the second half of my draft, it's definitely more about opportunity. He's healthy now. He's on a, pitching in most half of his games in a pitcher friendly ballpark. He's not in Colorado. He's, things like that, or he has a good defense behind him, or he's the 3rd starter instead of the 5th starter on all the depth charts. So I've got a better opportunity to continue to run with what, minimal skills you might have at that point. But I care less about the skills and more about the opportunity and what I can actually rely on when it comes to volume in the second half of the draft. Because I'm starting to filter through my little ADP projection sheet that I put together, and projecting playing time, especially for starting pitchers, is the hardest thing I think any projection can possibly do. that and projecting saves, I guess. But it's tough to look at. I look at innings pitched per appearance, and try to gauge the idea of like, hey, how many games are they going to be in, / how many starts are they going to make, versus how many innings the projections think they're going to have throughout the course of the year. And then you start saying, all right, well, this guy's only projected for 130 innings, but is that because he's only making, certain amount of starts, or does that mean he's going 6 innings throughout the game, but they expect him to miss some time throughout the season? And so that's an interesting way to like really look at projections. I'm looking at, just going down ADP, absurd to be somebody that comes up. Taj Bradley for PLV projections has 134 innings projected, but that's through a mixed bag of 20 starts and 21 relief appearances. So 41 appearances altogether. So it's like, it's hard. Like the fact that the projection is even taking that into account gives me a whole lot more, credit. I give more credit to that projection. So it's like, hey, we're realizing it's not just about the innings. It's about, hey, is this guy actually going to be making starts? Is he going to go into long relief? What's the expectation of their situation as well? Yeah. So, I mean, it's just something difficult to kind of like figure out, especially later on in drafts. Hey, how well does this projection system actually know the situation at hand of this pitcher and the rotation around him? I just realized there was no question there, Kevin. I was just going on a rant.
Oh, it was perfect. I agree with everything you just said. I was sitting here nodding the whole time.
So, I mean, we'll go into this throughout the course of the season. But like, how much do you trust yourself to work the matchups, to grab those, to pick the guy with the better matchup for strikeouts that won't hurt your ratios? We'll get to ratios a little bit more depth in the next episode, but you still have to take that into account. But in order to volume your way and chase those wins throughout the season, you've got to find the right matchups, and you can't hit you can't just rely on 2-pitch starters, because one, everybody's already chasing them, and usually somebody's at least 2 or 3 weeks ahead of that anyway. And there's so many landmines that end up hurting your other categories when you take too many of those risks.
I heard Derek Van Riper a few years ago say on Rates and Barrels that he was getting better at and more comfortable at streaming pitching, but he still didn't think he did it enough. And his comment was, I draft well enough and give myself a good enough foundation and ratios. I should trust myself more for streaming those matchups that you're talking about. And that's how I've played fantasy baseball for as long as I can remember. It's not as much that I trust myself picking those matchups out, but I'm comfortable rolling with those matchups, knowing I'm going to get blown up once in a while, because I trust that I drafted enough of a foundation that a blow up here and there isn't going to kill me. And players that we draft, good pitchers in good matchups, get blown up once in a while too. So it's not that you made the wrong decision every time you stream a pitcher and he gets blown up, right? I feel like the answer to your question is I trust myself to make good enough matchup plays, because I trust myself that I have a good enough foundation that I don't have to be perfect, because we're not going to be.
No, of course not. All right. Well, I think it's time that we kind of look at what we normally do. Is we look past our beginning of our drafts and we look at the end of our drafts for some diamonds in the rough, some guys that we think like, hey, we might be targeting them if we need to make up for some wins, some strikeouts, like I did in Glarf. Maybe you waited too long to add those pitchers, or you didn't add enough of them, and you need to fill out the last year roster with some more volume. We're going to do that right after this break. All right, we are back. Of course, you're still listening to On the Wire. We are talking chasing wins and strikeouts, those volume plays that you're going to have to make throughout the course of the season. But let's start off filling those categories in our 2026 drafts. And so, Kevin, we're going to look a little past, and I think we're going to we're going to throw out some names. Like when we do hitters, it's easier because it's like, oh, we can go groupings by different category or by different positions. They're all pitchers here, right? So I don't care if they're a starter. I don't care if they're a reliever. All I care about is whether or not you think they're going to get you some wins and some strikeouts. I'm going to put you on the spot here because it's just something I just thought of. How much is there anybody, especially late in your draft, that you would be targeting simply because you think they're going to have a really good matchup at the very beginning of the season, and maybe you can take advantage of? And should you be doing that? Like, are we expecting? I always used to feel as though starters shouldn't be expected to go more than 4 innings, especially in their first start, unless they're unless they're a top 2 in their rotation, especially guys who aren't fully stretched out. With the World Baseball Classic happening, there's going to be a handful of guys that are not stretched out properly, but they're going to want to get right back onto the mound anyway. Is there any matchups that you've noticed in the early 2 weeks of the season that you'd be targeting instead of fabbing on that first week, grabbing them with your 30th pick?
It's possible. I don't have a specific team or pitcher for you in that category now, but one thing that's great is that Nick Pollock just updated his top 400 pitchers, and he's already got the early season schedule offense matchups embedded in the article, right? And it's way too early for offensive ranks via PLV projections, but that gives us an idea. And absolutely, as we get into March and we're more confident that we know where guys are in the rotation, so whether or not they'll be pitching opening weekend, absolutely, that's something I'll take into play. I know with hitters, I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that Houston has a really nice schedule for the first couple of weeks of the season. I think they go to Colorado and Cincinnati as well, or something like they have a nice schedule, home games for the rest of them. And so absolutely, I'm taking that into consideration for some late round Houston hitters already. But absolutely, I'll take that into account for pitchers. We still have 1 month exactly from today. I think, right? I just looked at the date. Wow. 1 month exactly to opening day. That's amazing.
That's not true. We're recording this on the 27th in that silly.
We got the one game on the 25th.
You have the Giants hosting the Yankees on the 25th. And then most every other team plays on the 26th. And then Colorado.
I was a full day off of everybody playing then.
Yeah. There's a handful of teams that don't play until the 27th. It's just, why can't they
my Royals were scheduled to play on the 26th, and Atlanta postponed it a day weeks ago. I have no idea what's going on with that. Why would you move a game from opening day? But they've already done that. So yeah, there's a handful of teams that don't play until Friday, that opening week. But yes, absolutely, it's something I take into consideration. And Nick has it all on here. He's got them broken down. The teams the teams he's targeting with starting pitching.
Yeah.
Week 1, right? He's going to stay away from the Athletics are at home. He's going to stay away from there, right? So, but White Sox, he's got some, Angels, St. Louis, of course, some offenses we're going to target early in the season. Absolutely, we're taking that into consideration.
The one of the reasons actually I brought this up was that on the most recent episode of The Craft, Nick was talking, the very last team they brought up They were doing NL storylines of, obviously they only talk about starting pitchers there. And the very last team they talked about was the Colorado Rockies. And obviously nobody's targeting any of the Colorado Rockies, but you start looking. I asked this to you because it's interesting. Do you target it with like the last pick any Colorado Rockies pitcher, knowing that their first two series are actually on the road? So they haven't actually had an opportunity. They've been playing all spring training in Arizona. Granted, Arizona has its own, unique situations as far as like heat and not being pitcher friendly and what have you. But then they start off in Miami for 3, and then they start the following week at Toronto, which, isn't great. But they haven't had that opportunity to get used to the Colorado air, and to have that, impact them as much as it will throughout the rest of the season. The Miami one alone is, at least it's got to be tempting.
Yeah, I think so. We've talked about that issue with Colorado in the past, right? It's going to be if they head out on the road first thing in the season, I don't consider it rocky road for the opposing pitchers, right? They haven't been playing in Colorado. They haven't seen the movement in pitches not be there. They're still used to what they were seeing in Arizona. And yeah, with the opening weekend series versus Miami, here would be, as things stand right now, the 3 Colorado starters: Kyle Freeland, Michael Lorenzen, Jose Quintana. All 3 guys that we have talked about in seasons past and will talk about this season in the right matchups, right? And with that added narrative that you just brought up, the opening weekend of the season could be the best time of the year. Yes, Miami's offense is improved. We saw that last season, getting better and better. We're still not scared of them. Absolutely, last round pick in a draft, especially knowing I probably don't have 6 or 7 starting pitchers going that weekend at that point in my draft, because it's going to be limited. We're not going to see a lot of 4 and 5s. We may not even see that 5 for another week, right? So instead of drafting that 5, wait and pick him up in the following week's FAAB run, pick up Lorenzen or Quintana to throw him at Miami for Colorado before he's pitched in Colorado. Yeah, love that.
And this is a little thing, but very similarly a similar thought process here is that you remember, you just mentioned it, like there's only 3 for some teams. There's only 3 games in this first week. Others 4, right? And so there's going to be, you're going to have a hard time filling all 9 of your pitcher slots in that first week with guys who will actually start, right?
Right.
And so if you want to use your 30th round, 29th round pick on a reliever for one of those teams that has 4 games, you're probably at least going to get yourself 2 or 3 more strikeouts in that time period, rather than taking the 0, right?
Yep.
So
hopefully a couple innings of 0 ERA and WHIP. And if you get really, really lucky, maybe a win or a save there. But yeah, absolutely. And you may be more comfortable. I mean, these guys are all projected for right around a 5 ERA, pitching half their games in Colorado. I'm more than happy to have them for a start in Miami.
There's also, we don't have the luxury. I say that with air quotes, but we don't have the luxury of having the overseas games happen like 3 weeks prior. So we know what wins, what saves, what home runs are going to be on the table that you get to just blend in or draft or bid into. You're going to have to do all the work. I mean, this is only for hitters and only in NFBC, but as a reminder, yes, you do have the Yankees Giants game on that Wednesday. So there is an opportunity to, get an extra couple of hitters in there in your lineup if you want to load up on those 2 teams' hitters for the one game in particular. All All right, so yeah, give me a name, Kevin, that you're kind of eyeballing past. Again, we usually use 325. We're looking at the ADP in online championships over the course of the last. Well, we just did the month of February because that's about 4 weeks. Anyway, yeah, what name kind of stands out to you as somebody that you might be targeting if you're looking to kind of solidify or make up some ground in the two categories that we're talking about?
Yeah, I know there are questions with the Yankees starting rotation, especially with guys coming back from injury, right? We're going to see Garrett Cole at some point, we believe, hopefully sooner rather than later. Luis Heel looks like he's already going to be back, hopefully opening day. They brought in Ryan Weathers, but Will Warren is their 3. And he's not going till pick 330. He made 33 starts for the New York Yankees last season. He is definitely in this rotation, in my opinion, at a minimum until they get Garrett Cole and probably another pitcher back to this rotation. So I think Will Warren's here for a while. He got us 9 wins last season, 4.44 ERA, 4.07 FIP, and he's projected for more in that range by many of the projection systems. Steamer has him for a 4.01, the Bad X for a 4.04. Oopsie even has him for a 3.88. I had PLV pulled up here. There it is. Let's see real quick what we got Warren for here. 4.18. So the high 3s, low 4s ERA, where we're not going to get pristine ratios and a bunch of wins, or they would have been drafted a lot sooner. I think Will Warren is somebody that meets the criteria we talked about earlier. Good lineup, run support, nice bullpen, kind of shuffling some guys around. We think Bednar will be the 9th inning guy, though, but they have other options if things aren't going well. So I think Will Warren being taken over the past month in online championships at pick about 330 and not drafted in 7 of the drafts that have occurred this month. That's the key for me. There's 7 out of 39 drafts out there that he's available in FAAB. So that's the kind of thing I like to look at as well with many of these guys. And let me just 31 of the 39. So he's available in 8. He's available in over 20% of the leagues that have been drafted this month. He's available in that first FAAB run. And I think when we're chasing wins without a huge ratio risk, of course, the whip can kill us, right? And he had a 1.37 whip last season. When you were talking earlier about, we were talking about this with average, when we're talking batting power and the average drain. Yeah, when I'm looking at ratios, when I'm looking at these guys, the first one I'm looking at to back up my pick is whip. We all know what a bad ERA is when we look at it, right?
Sure.
And we, a 1.20 is a good whip for a Major League Baseball pitcher. A 1.2 is not a good whip for our fantasy teams, right? And when you're projected for a 1.3, Jeff Zimmerman put this tweet out a couple of seasons ago. What is the ERA equivalent of a 1.3 whip? I think it was 1.30. I don't remember the exact numbers at the time, but the answer was like a 4.7, something like that ERA, right? That's how bad of a whip, a 1.3 whip is in your lineup, right? It's equivalent of about a 4.7 ERA in your lineup for those innings. So I really want to watch that, but projections think he's going to improve. I like this, still 26 years old. So hopefully the projections are right and he improves even just a bit more. But when we're talking wins and strikeouts, I think Will Warren can, he was well over a strikeout an inning last year as well. So we're talking strikeouts here as well as wins. I look for double-digit wins. He's projected for between 7 and 9 by the projection systems, but they're only giving him 120 innings. They think he's going to lose his spot when the Yankees start getting guys back.
And I mean, that's the question.
Right now he's their 3, and so I'm banking on he can keep his job and get that 162 innings he got last year, maybe even more. And then we're looking at double-digit wins with right around a 4 ERA projected by the different projection systems. So yeah, I think Will Warren is exactly the type of guy we're talking about throughout the first 40 minutes of our episode here. I think he's exactly the type of guy we're talking about, because it brings up the concerns as well, right? That whip is scary. So there may be some matchups there where I don't want him in my lineup, but this is a guy we're taking at the end of our drafts, or some people are going to pick up in FAAB here early in the season. Definitely worth a shot there on Will Warren, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've got my draft board from Glarf up. I'm trying to find. Let's see. Does Control F work on this?
Yes, I believe
Will
so.
Warren, yes. So he was picked at 293 in that draft.
Got jumped
so
a little bit. Yankee fan?
I mean, moved up a little bit, but still
Yeah.
kind of within that bubble of that 325 mark that we're talking about. That you brought it up. It's like the Yankees have obviously Garrett Cole and Carlos Rodon coming back at some point. Exactly when, we don't know, but I think they're hopeful at least Cole will come back a little sooner than Rodon. Rodon won't be that far behind. And who are the odd men out? Here's the thing. It's not like the rest of the rotation is epitomes of health either.
Right.
I mean, Ryan Weathers alone, as the new guy in town, has a lot of injury history of his own. Cam Schlittler, he's still young. There's still time.
Do they try to go 6-man to try to keep all these guys healthy? And that typically we wouldn't like, but in this situation, we might be happy for that if it keeps Will Warren's job, right?
Yeah. And everybody except for those veterans I just mentioned, and then Max Fried, they all have options. They're all young, right? Even Weathers, he has an option left. Luis Heel has an option left. Warren has 2. Schlittler has 3. So it's like any of them could be the one that gets sent down if they have 100% fully healthy roster. It doesn't mean Warren is the most likely, especially if he is actually producing. Now he actually has to produce and not walk the farm, and figure out where all of his pitches are going to keep that on. But I do like the general idea that he's got the number 3 spot right now in theory. I mean, you have to put players in the rotation in some order. I wouldn't necessarily say he is the number 3 any more so than he is the number 5, between him, Heel, and Weathers. But it's nice that he's kind of guaranteed a spot, at least if the season were to start today.
It did make me feel good that Schlittler was already above him, because I think Schlittler is going to be good. And if they'd had Warren above him, I'd have been like, oh, there's another spot he's losing, right? So it was comforting to see that Schlittler was already ahead of him.
Right. The name that I notice, and I noticed him quite a bit when I was drafting as well, because he has an ADP, at least in these 12 teamers, of 359. No, that's the max. 341 is the average. Being min pick of 266, max pick of 359, which is very common with all these picks, right? It's like they swing 100 picks between their min and their max a lot of times. But he also has not been drafted in a lot of picks. He's only been picked 10 times in these 12 teamers over the course of the last month. And I grabbed him at 286. So at the beginning of the 20th round. Anyway, this is Yusei Kikuchi, who I'm talking about. And really, I grabbed him here because of that situation that I found myself in. Since I didn't grab pitchers, I needed guys that I thought were going to volume their way. They're going to pitch throughout the course of the year and, find their way into more opportunities. PLV projection, for example, has him with 31 starts in that time, starting throughout the course of the year. I mean, he's on the Angels. Of course, he's going to start all year round, unless he completely bulls up or gets hurt. but with 174 innings in 31, that averages out to more than, about 5 2/3 every single time out, giving the Angels bullpen less of an opportunity to blow it for him. And so I'm not exactly chasing wins with this, but the volume play alone, having I think he ended up being my 6th starter on this team. By this point, no, yeah, 6th starter on this team. Maybe actually my 5th starter. Oh no, like just having somebody that I can rely on to be in there every day. Would I in a 12 teamer, would I rather have him being my like team streamer that I can, fill in when there's an injury or when there's a really good matchup? Yeah, of course. But in a 15 teamer, you got to take what you can get. And so I'm eyeballing Kikuchi to kind of fill in that, the end of my rotation with somebody who I feel confident is going to be out there throughout the course of the season. How much do you buy into the projections of his innings projections that PLV has him for?
Oh, what was PLV's innings projection on him?
174.
Okay, that's right in line with what everybody has.
Right.
The other projections as well. And then we have the last 2 seasons. And the reason I bring this up, right? When Kikuchi first went to LA, it was last offseason. Everybody started jumping off of Kikuchi. We had liked him previous, right? And people were really concerned that he would lose the gains he made in Houston when he went to the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim organization. But his numbers were nearly identical to what they had been in 2024. He actually went out for 3 more innings. I know we're talking the 175 range, so that's non-existent really. Same number of innings, a couple of less wins going to the Angels, but I would say going into this season, we've talked about it. Others are talking about it on other podcasts. I kind of like that Angels lineup quite a bit.
It's every year. Everybody says this every year.
Yeah, well, then they all get injured. We know that's going to happen at some point. But going into the season, I like their lineup. We've been talking about 3 different relievers that could get saves, so that's a decent back end of the bullpen with Yates and Stevenson and these guys. So I like the steamer and Oopsie projecting Kikuchi for double-digit wins. PLV has him. Where'd he go? They
11.
give him 11 wins, double-digit wins. I'm getting a guy at this point in a draft that has the potential for double-digit wins with ratios that we can stomach. We're probably not throwing these guys in every matchup, so we hope that what we get from them will be better from that low 4 ERA and approaching a 1.3 whip. We'll try to maneuver to get better than that, but chasing wins, more strikeouts than innings pitched. This is a really good opportunity for somebody we can get this late in a draft if these projections come to fruition, and I would be right here. If I was making my own projections, they would be very similar to the last few seasons with a couple more wins. That's what he's being projected for.
All right, so all I really heard out of that, Kevin, is that you're drafting all the Angel starters because, reasons. But on that note, I'm going to put you on the spot here again. Yusei Kikuchi or Jose Soriano? Like, if you have to only have one Angel pitcher past ADP of 325, they both fit the bill. Here, I'm going to list you off the guys who have an ADP of past 325 with the 6 most projected strikeouts based on PLV is Kikuchi because of the innings pitched. He's projected for 176 strikeouts.
5 years ago, this is a 200 inning pitch guy, back-to-back seasons. So we're talking about right here.
Reed Detmers 156 projected strikeouts. Luis Severino, 154. Mitch Keller, 153. David Peterson, 151. And then Jose Soriano at 150. Brandon Fat right behind him as well at 150. So I guess I'll put Kikuchi, Detmers, or Soriano. Who do you trust more to actually hit those projections?
For innings only?
No, those are strikeout numbers, and that a lot of it is because their projected innings are solid, and without so I guess yes, because without the innings, they're not going to get those strikeouts, because these aren't necessarily high strikeout percentage players or pitchers per se. They need the volume their way into. Like Kikuchi is basically a 9-inning, not 9K per 9 pitcher at that rate, which is fine. But Detmer's 156 strikeouts. He is got innings pitched of, where'd he go? Innings pitched projections of 130. So Detmer's more so, but that might also be based on that the PLV has him projected to start 20 games into relief, show up in relief in 18 games. So there's going to be a mixed bag there. Obviously, he's going to have a higher K rate in those relief outings if those actually happen. Anyway, back to my question: Kikuchi, Detmers, or Soriano as far as late play Angels starters that you trust the most?
I like Soriano more as a pitcher. I'm probably more likely to draft Soriano. However, to answer your question, due to Soriano pumping out 98-mile-an-hour fastballs, I trust the innings projection more for Kikuchi, and therefore trust the strikeouts more for Kikuchi. But to start the season, going into the season, I'd rather have Soriano.
Yeah, and that's a play you got to make. It's like,
yep.
That's a play you're making at this.
I would draft either one of these guys at the end of a draft, to be clear.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And I think the play is, Soriano in a 12-teamer and Kikuchi in a 15-teamer. Because at this point, at the ADP that they're going, 325-ish or whatever, so the 325 pick in a 12-teamer is a throwaway pick. It's basically a throwaway pick. It's less so in a 15-teamer. You're still trying to iron out some holes at that point in your draft. All right. Yeah. Anybody else? You of the list that I gave you, or that I just went through, or any other names that kind of standing out as far as you know what? The projections have them wrong. I'm targeting them anyway because of the opportunity, because of the Will Warren effect or whatever. I think that they're going to get more innings and more opportunity than projections are suggesting.
This isn't as much I think they're going to get more. This is more of, similar to Warren, there's a big whip risk is the only reason I feel like he's available at this point in the draft. And when you brought up the range of the draft pick, when you brought up Kikuchi, this is actually who I thought you were talking about. And that's David Peterson of the New York Mets. I think, once again, good lineup, good bullpen, projected for double-digit wins, even 11 and 12 wins by Steamer and Oopsie. Once again, right around a 4 ERA projected. Steamer actually has him for a 3.65, but we know the issues he's had with that walk rate throughout his entire career. Obviously, that's going to lead to whip issues more often than not. And in spite of the 9 wins that he gave us last season with ERA in the low 4s, which we can stomach from guys here at the end, especially because we're probably playing matchups with these guys. The 1.37 whip is horrible. The 1.29 in 2024, we need at least that, hopefully better. But so he's very similar to Will Warren in my mind. He's also the number 3 listed here on roster resource in their rotation. But for all of the same reasons I like Will Warren and more, I don't think David Peterson is in danger of losing this job unless he's absolutely horrendous. He's probably got a safer spot in the rotation than Will Warren, but everything else we talked about is the same situation in my mind.
Yeah, he was on that list I just gave you as well. Like, 151. He's the fifth most strikeouts projected by PLV, going past ADP of 325. Teammate Clay Holmes also on that list. So, the fact that you brought him up over Clay Holmes obviously shows me that you're a little bit more biased in that route. But if if you're at a point in a draft where you're going to be grabbing either David Peterson and Clay Holmes, and David Peterson goes off the board, are all the things you mentioned, equally, do they equally apply to his teammate?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And going back to something you said just a couple of minutes ago, pitching deeper into games, right? 168 and 2/3 innings in 30 starts. We're not getting to 6 innings, but we're closer to 6 innings per start than 5, right? So getting a little deeper into the game than many other pitchers that we can count on in this area of a draft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Peterson at 5.6 average innings pitched per appearance. Clay, his teammate, less than 5, barely less than 5. So, which I think tracks in general, as long as Peterson can stay healthy. Well, as long as Holmes can stay healthy as well. But I would venture to guess that that'll be the case. And of course, projections on Clay Holmes are still going to be holding on to his relief outings. They're not that far away where that's going to be completely out of the algorithm that's calculating that as well. So I'm not surprised to see his average innings pitched a little lower. The last thing, I'm like, is there a player that maybe isn't going to, you don't necessarily trust to get you a whole lot of innings and volume your way, but they can get you some strikeouts early just because that's the type of pitchers that they are. Talking about guys that, obviously have a very high K rate. Maybe they're a reliever. Maybe you don't trust them to keep a job all year, but they have one presumably coming into the season that you might be able to take advantage of early on, because nobody's drafting them because they're looking for players that are going to be on their roster all year round, and they just happen to still be around. Is there any targets that kind of fit that bill?
Kind of. This guy, I don't know how many innings to even consider to count on. I really don't. The innings are a big question for me and Spencer Arrighetti. But this is a pitcher that Nick has been talking about quite a bit this offseason, especially early in the offseason when he was going after pick 500. Nick was up in arms, right? This guy has been good when healthy. He was injured last year. He's coming back. That's the issue. How many innings am I getting? He's being projected for upper 80s to around 90, look to the end of the 90s for innings. 2 seasons ago, before the injury, we saw 145. Sometimes when we see that and then a guy misses a lot of time due to injury, we can get close to that we saw 2 seasons ago, but I don't think we can count on that. I think we can only count on what is being projected. If he gives us more, that's great. But I don't think the Astros will baby someone like Spencer Arrighetti early in the season. I think they'll use him. And if they decide he has an innings cap, they'll shut him down later in the year. Spencer Arrighetti isn't someone that they will count on if they make the postseason to make postseason starts for him. Go out there and give us the innings we need right now. And when Nick was talking about him early in the offseason when he was going after pick 500, I had him written down and was circled so I wouldn't forget about him in every draft I was in. So Spencer Arrighetti, it's for a different reason, really, than you brought up, but I think it does answer your question. I am not counting on more than about 80, 90 innings. I'm hopeful that he might approach 140, but I'll take what he gives me early in the season. And he's about a strikeout an inning guy.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm very interested, especially at the end of the draft, in guys that, again, I talked about, like, especially in the first week, 2 weeks of the season, guys who have a lot of matchups. I can maybe volume my way into a couple extra strikeouts. And if I get lucky, they are, they're going to walk away with a win, a vulture win here or there. So middle relievers are not out of the question to draft, especially at the end, if they have the right schedule, the right team context. Drew Anderson is somebody that comes to mind. Looks like the first man out of the rotation in Detroit at the moment, especially with the acquisitions that the Tigers made, and paying up for Scooble, and he's not going anywhere, at least not until the Tigers are out of contention at the trade deadline. But he should be the long man out, or first man out, if you will, of the bullpen, and he should get he's not going to get a 6 inning start, but he could still get you 6 innings in that first week. And at his projected strikeout rate, this is somebody who can, vulture himself into a win with the Tigers. If, Casey Mize goes out there and struggles, Drew comes out there and he's the first one to take the ball and he just runs with it for the rest of that first start, I wouldn't be surprised, right? So yeah, Drew Anderson, somebody I'm eyeballing for that situation. And then I wouldn't say everybody's, but I'm starting to hear the name a lot more, and I'm not happy about it. Jacob Latz situation in Texas, possibly still being the 5th starter, if not the 6th starter, could end up being, again, that long man to start the season and then moves his way into the rotation at some point. Would be nice to see. And yeah, I was able to grab. He was one of the few picks that I made during Glarf that I heard, oh man, from the other side of the room. And I'm like, all right, cool. I feel good about that. All right. Well, we have a lot more to talk about when it comes to pitching categories. We're going to do it in the next episode. So Kevin, close us out here though, with any other added piece of information that you might want to tack on, especially if it has to do with your favorite, chasing wins.
Yep. A couple of things. One, I want to keep an eye on the Dodgers and this situation with Shohei Ohtani not being stretched out. He's going to pitch. He may not go deep into games. When that was the case last season, it was Wobleski most of the time. That gives me interest, right? And maybe it's somebody different, but be ready. If it's the same guy following Ohtani after 3 or 4 innings, his first 2 starts, jump on whoever that is. But that's who I would guess if I had to guess right now. And I don't think there's anything wrong with taking him at the end of a draft, chasing wins. Couple of Royals, they're basically the same guy. Different reasons that they do this, but Lugo and Waka are both going after pick 325. Other than when Lugo was injured last year, for the past 3 to 4 seasons, they both outperformed their projections in the ratio categories. This type of once you've done it 3 or 4 seasons, I have to believe what you've been doing, not what we're projecting you to do, to an extent, right?
Sure.
The whole point of projections is to take our biases out of it. But some of these guys we know outperform projections on a regular basis. These guys are going to give us innings, and if the Royals lineup performs as we expect it, they have decent bullpen. Many would say it's better before the 9th inning than the 9th, but nice bullpen, and they've added to it with Strom coming in and others, Urseg in the 8th and Estevez in the 9th. So yeah, I really like both Lugo and Waka and Justin Verlander, right?
Okay.
If we're chasing wins, his last month and a half of last season was really good, and maybe that's his age. Maybe it takes him 2/3 of a season to get ramped up and going, but this is a nice ballpark to pitch in back to Detroit. So I think we'll get some wins out of Justin Verlander. And the thing is that I would bring up to answer your question, just remember, just a reminder, we all know this, but we don't have to keep these guys on our roster all season. These are all shots we're taking. That's and my reserve picks in my drafts this time of year, I take a couple more pitchers than I will leave on my bench throughout the season. To start the season, I'll take a shot on a couple of extra pitchers. In season, I'm going to be using those spots for my weekend coverage for my hitters so I can change my lineups on Friday. But my roster is not going to be the same even mid-April that it is on opening day. I'm taking a couple extra starting pitchers right now, taking that shot. It kind of relates to one, what you asked earlier. Are there matchups the first weekend of the season? Yep, we'll draft those guys. And two, I always say the reason I stream pitching is because the people that stream pitching are the ones that are going to get the breakouts that didn't get drafted. They're not going to be available on the waiver wire when you go looking for them because they have a couple of great starts. They're already on the roster of whoever streamed them for those starts. So in my mind, it's worth taking a shot on as many of these guys as we can until we need those spots for our hitter coverage once the season gets going.
All solid, very solid moves here. Name that popped out the last second for me was just Cade Cavalli, just because who else is going to pitch in Washington? So those innings pitch is going to I don't care about, again, we don't care about ratios in this episode. We just care about the guys who are going to be out there every fifth day. All right. Well, that is going to wrap it up then for episode 244 of On the Wire. On behalf of Kevin Hasting, I am Adam Howe. With all that, thanks you for listening. We bid you goodbye.